Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, welcome back to the channel, and I know I'm a little bit late on covering this. I didn't realise we were getting a bonus update so quickly after 10.9, but we do have 10.9 bonus update notes. It's not an enormous patch, to be honest. It's more so just some nerfs to some specific gods that were overperforming, you know, be that like gods that were overperforming in general, or ones that got the spicy changes that went a little bit too far. And honestly, I think that's kind of fine at the moment. We're very new into this patch at the moment, and you don't want to necessarily immediately ruin gods that like finally got to see play because of the spicy buffs and stuff like that. And I think overall the meta is pretty healthy and fun right now. There are obviously a few outliers, but a lot of them got hit in these patch notes. So let's just jump in. So there's a new skin for Chak as well. I think that's a Magic the Gathering skin that's releasing in this patch. So first up, the Verdant Spirit Totem, which is the green one, decreased max health and mana from 10% to 8%. This makes sense. We recently got some data from the Pro League opening tournament, Road to Worlds, where this was the second most used Spirit Totem. The most used one was actually the cooldown reduction. But I think partly why the cooldown reduction was the most used one is because everyone picks that up early game. You know, before you've got your 40% or 30% CDR online in your build, a lot of people just pick up the blue totem for CDR on their buff. Yeah, that 10% CDR is just really powerful, but then once you get more towards the late game and you've already got your 30 or 40% CDR in your build, especially when power pots come online, almost no one's taking the blue totem when power pots come online. But for like the first 10 to 20 minutes, a lot of people are really picking up the blue one. But the next most used one was the green one, because the green one is really strong, and I think it probably did need a nerf. Green buff, you can get almost hit 5k HP in some support builds, which is kind of insane. Really good for solo laners as well. This is the one that you almost always take on a solo laner outside of the early game when you might want the cooldown reduction one for laning phase, but if you're playing a warrior and, you know, you get your Prim online, you're already at basically max CDR there. So you don't really need the blue one anymore, and you just go for the green one. And yeah, it was definitely one of the most strong Spirit Totem effects there. I would potentially even like to see some of the other ones buffed up rather than this nerfed necessarily, because I think the cooldown and the green one are like both definitely about even, I would say. Maybe even the blue one's slightly better, but mostly for the early game and mid game. Whereas like we rarely saw lifesteal being picked up. We rarely saw percent pen being picked up except for in the hyper late game. And the only reason we saw the purple one being picked up is because ADCs just go that no matter what. They don't really want anything else, unless you're like an Ula or whatever, they might want the cooldown reduction. So yeah, good change overall. The Spirit Totems, they can probably analyze them a little bit more and maybe make some more balanced changes to them in the next patch, you know, be that buffing like the lifesteal or the percent pen, or nerfing the blue one, I imagine. But moving into god changes, that's just like a quick conquest change. The Season of Celebration brought some really spicy god changes to several gods, and the team were ready to react as necessary. The shifts of strength have been noticeable but not drastic. The nerfs to several of these gods in this pass had to bring them more in line without drastically reducing their potential. So yeah, this is what I was talking about at the start of the video. Basically, you don't want to like give these spicy buffs to gods and then like immediately in the next patch just nerf them back into irrelevance. So yeah, I think some reasonable nerfs to some of those top performers is perfect for this kind of a patch. Recipes have been a welcome addition to the game, and while Bountiful Bow and Golden Gooseberries have been consumed voraciously, they are about the strength level we would expect. The other recipes will be visited in the main patch for extra garnish. Yeah, so basically, we saw this in the Road to Worlds tournament. Bountiful Bow and Golden Gooseberries were almost exclusively the only recipes picked up. Occasionally, you would see junglers pick up the Party Punch, and maybe even some supports picking up the Protection Aura one. Drumstick basically saw no play whatsoever. Bountiful Bow and Golden Gooseberries accounted for like 90% of all the recipes bought. So yeah, either you had to nerf those two down, or you had to buff the other three back up. It looks like they're going the direction of buffing the other three back up, which I think makes a lot of sense. And so yeah, we'll see that in the main patch. They're probably going to buff up the strength of the other three recipes to kind of match what Bountiful Bow and Golden Gooseberries are offering at the moment. And finally, Matikaros and some Wukong remain as two gods that were outliers in their strength, and getting further nerfs to tone them down. Makes sense. So first up, we have Apollo. Across the sky, they have increased the mana cost from 10 plus 35 to 55 to 40 plus 40 to 60. So yeah, just overall increasing the mana cost of Apollo's ultimate. It can be a really frustrating ability when he uses it to like split push and rotate to fights across the map, even get away. It can be a really annoying ability to deal with, and reducing the amount of time that you can spend in the air absolutely makes sense. Cabrakhan been performing quite well since the buffs, but I wouldn't say he's been like completely broken, but they are nerfing the mana gain per hit on Refraction Shield from 10 to 30 to 10 to 26. I think this is reasonable. When they first revealed this change, I assumed it was you just get that much mana back, but it's per target, and so you can actually get a lot of mana back from this ability, so nerfing that makes some sense. Very small nerf overall though. It's only lost 4 in the late game, and the same at rank 1. But probably the bigger change is Tremor's increased cooldown from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. Will this really make a difference? I don't think so. You know, if you're going max CDR, which you probably are, or at least close to it, This is still going to be on like a 2-point-something second cooldown. It's probably not going to make much of a difference. But as I mentioned, I wouldn't say Cabrakhan is completely like batshit broken or anything. He's just quite strong, so I don't think anything more than this will really be needed. Hebo, this is a quite historic one. Water cannon, increased cooldown from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. As far as I know, this ability has always been on a 3-second cooldown. It's been like the defining feature of Hebo, that he had this like really high damage ability but with short range, so he has to be a little bit risky with it, and having it on such a low cooldown. That's now gone up to 4 seconds, so yeah, that's interesting. Hebo 1 always been known for being on 3 seconds, so that should be interesting, but yeah, probably deserved. We kind of saw with Bountiful Bow like how ridiculous this can get with low cooldown abilities like this, and Hebo in general, like, is always really strong when, like, high power builds are available because you just get so much free damage off of this, like, every 1.8 seconds with max cooldown. It's a little bit ridiculous, so I do think this change makes sense. Because otherwise you would have to, like, nerf Bountiful Bow, and they've made it clear that they don't want to do that, and they want to buff up the other recipes. And if you're not going to nerf Bountiful Bow, you have to nerf this, because this was just ridiculous. Hebo was, like, one of the top gods in the meta, so yeah, this makes sense. More Matikaros nerfs, which is interesting. He is still seeing a lot of play. The Road to Worlds tournament, we saw him a lot. He was banned and picked quite a lot. And he's still very popular and still really strong, even after all the immense nerfs that have been thrown at him. This god, it just shows how completely busted he was at release. People didn't even realize how strong he was at release for a while, but yeah, this god is one of the strongest releases of all time, in my opinion. But yeah, they've decreased the duration of his 3 from 3 minutes to 2 minutes, and they've also increased the cooldown from 25 down to 15 to 25 down to 21. So basically, leveling this ability, it barely even affects the cooldown anymore, so in the late game, it's going to be a little bit harder for him to sort of shift those bushes around. Like, if you ward in one of them and you can just place another one down or whatever, you're going to be building max CDR, so this is still going to be up like probably about every 15 seconds or so. But yeah, reduce the duration as well. This is mainly a change for high-level Matikaros play, I would say. I think most of your like low to mid-level Matikaros players don't utilize this ability to its fullest extent whatsoever. And it also requires some communication to use it properly. So I think this is mainly for the high-level players. You know, the nerf in the last patch was mainly for everyone. You know, nerfing his damage down on the ultimate, and also the prot shred nerfs that it's got over time. But yeah, this change I would say is almost exclusively for like higher end of mid, high-level Matikaros, and obviously for the Pro League, this is really huge. A lot of the pros complain about this ability more than anything else on Matikaros. Next up, we have Pele. They have decreased the fuel return per hit from 5 scaling to 9 to just 5 at all ranks with Pyro class. I think this makes a lot of sense. She basically had infinite fuel. Like, if you're playing Pele, when you have 2 casts of your 1 to use in a team fight, you basically had infinite fuel unless that team fight went on for a long time. You know, if it was a team fight that didn't last more than about like 20 seconds or something, you basically just had infinite fuel when they made this buff. And so it makes sense to nerf it down. It's going to be the same in the early game. But late game, you're going to be getting almost half the amount of fuel gain that you were getting from this before. Obviously, it's still way better than it was before because it didn't give fuel before the change. But yeah, that's going to be a nice nerf for Pele. She's been very popular. She's been seen playing mid, obviously seen playing jungle, even a little bit of solo as well. So definitely a nerf needed for her, I would say. And finally, we have some Wukong. Master's Will, they have decreased the attack speed slow slightly and increased the cooldown slightly. This change, I don't know if it really makes a whole lot of sense. The attack speed slow on this ability is obnoxious, and to be honest, nerfing it is probably the way to go. And then they've increased the cooldown as well, but I don't really know if this is the problem with Wukong, to be honest.